I definitely did most of the building. I laid the carpet, all that fun stuff. But it's all about us interacting and being able to ask some questions that maybe we've been wondering or pondering about, or questions that are now created in our mind that kind of get our wheels turning. And so we want to continue to encourage that. I've said it multiple times, but I'm going to continue to say it. If you do have specific NADA questions, remember we do have the NADA Pavilion. It's located inside of the West Hall there to your left. And as we finished up talking about electrification, make sure that you see our Electrification Solution Center, which is over in the North Hall. That way, if you have any questions about electrification, we've got some people standing by that can really help and field and answer some of those questions that you might have, all right? So we're going to continue in our programming this afternoon and continue to move forward. And next up, we are actually going to hear from another one of our gold sponsors. I want to thank our previous gold sponsor that just left, which is IHS Markit. We talked about, obviously, EV and what that means to dealership disruption. But now we're going to hear from another gold sponsor, which is Affinitive. And we are going to talk about AI, artificial influence, digitizing what dealers do best, all right? And so he's been here before, so I'm going to welcome him back to the stage. I've got Joe St. John. I'm glad you didn't bring coffee. I'm glad you brought water this time.
Bro.
Yeah, see, I appreciate that.
I don't want to lose my voice in this climate.
There we go. Enjoy. If you need
Thanks,
me, I'm over
man,
here.
Appreciate it. What up, NADA? Welcome to the live stage. It's like 1 o'clock. You're all got like the lunch tummy. You're going to sit down and chill out for a few minutes. I'm going to give you the least digital, most digital production that you've seen up here. There's going to be not a lot of facts and figures. We're going to talk about artificial influence or digitizing what you're actually really great at. Anybody know what influence is? Show of hands. What does influence mean? I'm glad you're going to learn some stuff today. I'm glad nobody raised their hands, right? Like then you're going to learn some new things. Influence is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as the capacity to change someone's behavior, the capacity to impact someone's behavior. And if you've been selling cars or in this business for a while, you know that that's kind of our primary function. And so I want to start out today by telling you a little bit about who I am. I know what most of you are thinking, and I'm going to get super meta right now, is like, why am I listening to this dude that looks like a washed up Sons of Anarchy extra? And I get it, like I would think the same thing, right? Like, and here's the deal, like most people know me as this weird avatar of digital that shows up and has a beard and wears a vest and talks. What most people don't know, and I'm gonna give you a little like insider baseball here, is before I did any of this, I was actually a trainer at a huge F&I products company, and I wore a suit and tie for like 20 years, and I literally started selling cars in 1998. Like I've been doing this for a long time, and I literally, it just weirds me out that that's me. Like it is so strange to me. Now on top of that, the other thing that I think about is like, why did anybody listen to me? Like I think all the time, like what qualities and credentials did I have as an F&I trainer for anybody listening to me? Because before I was doing that, I was literally just some dude at a dealership, like slinging metal, working car deals, being on the desk till 10 o'clock at night and like taking F&I turns. And so I think like, well, I did it. So like now I'm gonna learn some word tracks and go teach it. And I'm up here to talk to you from a vantage point of literally like F&I school. Like who here sends people to F&I school? Show of hands. Like who sends, okay, who's here's dealer people? Show of hands, dealer people here. Okay, who here's ever been to an F&I school? Anybody? Okay, good. You know why you send people to F&I schools? Right? You send them to go there because that stuff works, right? They come back, they're meat eating, they're hungry, they're fired up. You send people to sales school, they come back and for like, a week or two, they sell way more cars. And so we send people off to go do training because literally the techniques that they're learning are effective. That's why we send them to do it. Right? The techniques that we learn in selling are actually effective. That's why we keep sending people to do it. And what's super interesting to me is that we've been studying and teaching selling for over 2,000 years, right? Like we think of this as some new thing like, digital influence or digitally influencing people. We've literally been studying influence since like ancient Greece, and we've literally been talking about influence. In fact, this like one of the most famous, philosophers of all time literally wrote a sales book, like wrote a book on selling. Like literally Aristotle wrote a book on selling. It's called the Articles of Rhetoric. And he said 2,400 years ago, if you want to change someone's behavior, you literally need 3 things. Like there are 3 foundational building blocks that you need to actually change someone's behavior. Anybody know what those are? Any guesses? Man, you guys are all learning stuff today. This is awesome. Number 1, you need ethos. Anybody heard the term ethos before? What is ethos? It's authority, it's credibility. It's the ability to like actually come from a place of knowledge. Anybody here in a dealership, any service writers, by the way? Okay, good, there's no service, boo. Right? You ever had like a service writer go talk to a customer, tell them what they needed? Customer says, no, I think I'm gonna wait on it. They go get a technician. Technician walks out like cleaning a wrench. It's like, we found a problem here. Here's what you need to do. And then what does the customer do? Okay, sure, I'll do that. Why? Well, because the technician had authority in that conversation to actually influence the behavior of that consumer. So you have to have authority. The other thing you have to have is this thing called pathos. What is pathos? Anybody know? It's an emotional appeal. Like, you ever have a salesperson that doesn't know anything about your cars but sells more of them than anybody else? Why? Because customers love them, right? They connect with them. They have this like bond. They build this relationship, and they connect emotionally with the person that you're trying to influence. The other thing that Aristotle said you needed was called logos, or logic. You need to have enough like data and support to back up the emotional appeal that you're making to the customer. So literally 2,400 years ago, one of the most famous philosophers in the world said, look, if you want to like sell somebody a car, you need these three things. And what's really cool now is that we don't just have to take Aristotle's word for it, it's all backed up by brain science. Like, we literally have the capacity now to watch your brain in a functional MRI, tell you a bunch of stuff and see what happens. And because of that, we're now learning how this influence is actually impacting the way that you make decisions. And I have news for you. Like, we like to think as humans. Like, we all like pride ourselves and the fact that we like weigh all the information and make really logical decisions. We're like, oh no, I'm gonna like weigh all the information and I'll make the decision based on the data. Here's the truth. We don't actually do that. We make really emotional decisions, and then we find data to support the emotional decisions that we make. Nobody logically buys a brand new Corvette, especially in today's market, right? You don't logically do that. Why do you do that? Because when you hit the gas, it makes you go, ah, right? Like, it literally, you do it because emotionally you respond to the experience of that, and that's what brain science is telling us. We are literally making decisions today inside of our limbic system, not our neocortex. Our neocortex is our data processing center. It's where we do math, right? Our neocortex is where we actually process data and information, and we don't really use that much for decision making. We use our emotional system for decision making. I'll prove it to you. Anybody here ever heard somebody say, well, my gut just told me I needed to do that? Okay, that's an emotional decision making that's happening inside of their brains. So we now know how brains work really, really, really well. The other thing about this is your outside data neocortex part of your brain where you do math is also associated with pain and discomfort. Anybody here ever gotten back from a test drive and the customer like loves you, you're their favorite person, and then you sit down and you put the numbers in front of them, and what happened? Yeah, that's the exact body language change that they do. They're like, oh yeah, and then why? Well, because we're moving them to a place of discomfort. When we have to do analysis and data and math, it actually makes us uncomfortable. I'll prove it to you. We're gonna do an experiment here live on the Live Hates. If you're watching from home, do this right now. Everybody who's got a pen and paper, get out a pen and paper. All right, I see there's like two, yes, there we go. If this was a sales meeting, two people would be getting spiffs, right? Nobody else would. Get a pen and paper out, you ready? Here we go, here's the experiment. I want everybody to take the next 60 seconds and do this simple 8th grade math problem. 375,133 divided by 277. I don't want you to use your calculator. I want you to actually just do it out on the paper right now. I see people that are doing it already shaking their heads and saying, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Okay, so here's the actual experiment. We're gonna change this now. I think I've got like 20 minutes left up here. Here's what we're gonna do. For the next 20 minutes, we're gonna do 8th grade math, like long division, big multiplication, some basic geometry, or we can prick your finger, draw blood, check your glucose levels, and then you can just go back to doing whatever you're wanting to do. Who's getting their blood drawn? Show of hands. That's all of us, because we would rather do that than sit here and do math problems. And if you think about it, this is what happens to customers when we get back from a test drive where we're emotionally in love with that vehicle, and all of a sudden you're showing numbers to me. And the thing is, we've known this for a while. In fact, Henry Ford said it best, right? Thinking is the hardest work there is, which is probably why so few people do it, because it actually hurts us to do thinking. And advertisers are using this against us always. My favorite example comes from like the 1980s, early 1990s. We found out in America that we had stopped drinking milk. Milk used to be like our second place beverage. I'm not gonna tell you what the first place beverage was, but milk was second place. And all of a sudden we stopped drinking it. And what you had when we stopped drinking milk was these incredibly intelligent people being like, we just need to tell everybody how good milk is for them, and they'll drink more milk. We need to tell them all the features and benefits of milk. So they ran this whole entire ad campaign. Literally, the whole thing was milk, it does a body good. There'd be like a person in front of the mirror, and they'd be like, milk, it does a body good. And so they ran this entire campaign around the benefits of drinking milk, and guess what happened to milk consumption? It continued to go down. Like, it literally continued to decline. So there's this company out of San Francisco called Goodby Silverstein and Partners, and what they did was they got together and said, you know what? Forget the reasons why you should drink milk. We all drink milk for kind of the same reason, right? Like, it's delicious and it goes with a few things. And when do you want milk the most? When you're about out of milk. Anybody here ever, like, you ever had this experience where you like pour the cereal in the bowl, right? And then you grab the milk jug out, you unscrew the lid, and you pour the milk in there, and it just goes like the last like half a centimeter of milk dumps out, and then you're mad at your like one dumb kid that you know just left enough that they could stick it back in there, right? Well, that's when we want milk. We want it when we can't have it. And so what Goodby Silverstein and Partners did was they ran an incredible ad. They had this little like nerdy looking dude in a like museum. There's like the music playing. He's making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He puts the sandwich together. The music on the radio goes down, and it's like, and now for our $10,000 call, and he takes this huge bite of the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and his phone rings. And the phone on the phone, for the $10,000 question, who shot Alexander Hamilton? And then you see he's in the Alexander Hamilton Museum. It's like, here's the bullets, here's the guns. And he like confidently says, Hohenberg, because he's got a mouthful of peanut butter. And they're like, come again. He's like, Hohenberg, and his mouthful of peanut butter. He's like, hang on, let me get my milk. And he like pours the milk in, and it does the same little like thing into the glass, right? And so it goes into the glass, and then they hang up, and then it cuts to, on the screen, it goes black, and what comes up? Yeah, got milk. All of you said it, right? That's an emotional appeal to a consumer to buy a product. They ran that ad. Guess what happened to milk consumption? It immediately went up. So the tools of influence that Aristotle taught us about 2,000 years ago are still in practice today, and they're meaningful. And every customer that's interacting with you in every way that they're interacting with you is actually susceptible to them from an influence perspective. And there's a lot of scientists out today that are literally writing books on it. This is Robert Cialdini. He is the #1 cited social scientist in America. He didn't just write the book on influence, he wrote books on influence. And he's an academic at Arizona State University. And he literally defined that there are 6 primary principles of changing someone's behavior. There are literally 6 primary drivers that are hacks to our neocortex and limbic system that make us statistically more likely to say yes. And if you're in a car, who's car dealership people? Let me see hands. Who's sold cars before? Okay, all of you, you've used all these hacks. And I'm going to teach them to you because I think they're incredibly powerful. They're called the 6 principles of influence. Principle number 1, reciprocity. What does reciprocity mean? Darian, I'm joking. I'm not going to call you out, like, unless you want to answer it. Yeah, to reciprocate. So like if I invite you to my party and you don't invite me to your party, you're a prick, right? Like that's what reciprocity is. And we know it, and we like use it inside of the way that we do things. Well, did you know that if you give something to somebody, they're infinitely more likely to say yes to a request you make to them? You do this at the dealership all the time. It's hot outside. You guys have a cooler full of water with your like label on it. You go busting up. What do? You hand them an ice cold bottle of water. That's a gift from the dealership to the consumer. Right? Whose service lounge has cookies in them? Why? Because that's a gift to the consumer. When I give a gift to that consumer, I increase the likelihood of that consumer saying yes to my request. How about the next one? Scarcity. Do people want more of what they can have less of? Yes or no? Bro, look at the numbers right now. Your grosses are unbelievable. And do you guys remember when we used to have lots of cars, how sometimes it was terrible trying to get rid of them? Bro, when I was working the desk, I had an inventory control manager. I was at a high volume store with 500 plus units a month. And this is back in the days when Toyota, where I ended up with 11 Voodoo Blue FJ Cruisers, 11 of them. And so what did my inventory control guy do? He was like, hey, let's just put them all in the front line. So we put all 11 out there, and like 60 days later, guess how many we'd sold? None of them. I was taking a TO on like an 85-year-old man who was buying an Avalon for his wife. And he goes, son, are you the manager? And I was like, well, yeah, of course. Is everything okay? Like, all right, this is about to get rough, right? He's like, no, things are great. But hey, you know, I own a pawn shop, and I don't normally buy a new car, but Darla wants an Avalon, so I got her one. And here's the deal. I noticed you got 11 of them blue thingies out front. If I have 11 of the same radios in my pawn shop, I don't put them all on the shelf. I put one at a time, and when I sell that one, I put another one out there. And then when I sell that one, I put another one out there. And I went, all right, light bulb moment, let's get rid of all of them. We hit them in the back, we put one out there. Guess how long it took us to sell it? 2 days. That's the way that the market, that's the way that we are triggered to behave as consumers. It's called scarcity, authority. We talked about it. Why do TOs work? Because that's the manager talking to them. And how many times in a TO, by the way, did you literally just say the same thing that the salesperson said 30 seconds ago? Right? I said literally the exact same thing that salesperson said. What does the customer do? Oh, sounds good. I'll go ahead and sign right there. That's I appreciate it. Dude, that guy just said what I just said. Why are you saying yes to me? Right? Because I have authority. Consistency. We engage in behaviors, and if we engage in that behavior, we're more likely to engage in a similar behavior in the future. We were taught this when I came through selling cars. I went to sales training. I'm not going to tell you the name of the trainer because I don't want to get sued. His first name's the same as mine. His last name's Spanish for green. And it was amazing training, unbelievable. And what he taught me was that if I got 45 yeses in 45 minutes, my closing rate went to 90%. Who's heard that before? That's true. The more that a customer says yes to you, the more likely it is when you get to the big decision, they're going to say what? Yes, it's absolutely true, and it's backed up by science. And then on top of that, liking. Anybody here ever had somebody buy something from you simply because they liked you? Anybody ever it's not the right car, it's like an ugly blue color on the outside, it's an FJ Cruiser, right? They don't really want it, they want the sunshine yellow one, and I don't have it, but I'm smiling and we're laughing and having a good time, and they go, oh, what the heck, and they sign. You ever had the flip side of that, where they're not buying from you because they don't like you? As a salesperson, if you're in that situation, get out of the situation, give that deal to somebody else because a half of a deal is better than a lost deal. And then social proof and consensus. You guys ever have that Saturday at the dealership where it is like a feeding frenzy and it's just going nuts out on the showroom? People look to other people to decide whether or not it's safe for them to do something. We literally look to others to decide what we're gonna do. And when I'm sitting on the showroom and all of a sudden I see deal jackets coming out to every table around me and every customer signing off, it feels way more comfortable for me to sign off on my car deal. Okay, that's how you're using these principles today. And here's what I'm here to tell you. You should be using every one of these principles digitally at your dealership, and if you're not, you're missing business. Let me say that again. You should be using these same techniques and principles that I learned busting ups in 1998 on your website, in your digital marketing, and everything you're doing, because the principles are still the same. They've been the same since Aristotle wrote about them 2,400 years ago. And I'm going to show you examples of how companies out there are using these techniques today. Anybody ever gone to a website like this that triggered reciprocity that says, hey, want superior business results? Start creating superior content, enter your email here for free training. They say, hey, enter your email here and I'll give you free training. No cost to you, you'll get free training, you'll be better at what you do. You know why they do that? Because they want you to buy something. It's literally triggering reciprocity. How about any of you ever signed up for those free emails that tell you about what's happening? I'm signed up to a ton of them. Automotive State of the Union, I read that every single day. It's unbelievable. The GIFs get me. And by the way, if you call them GIFs, we're not friends anymore. Right? They're a GIF. Now, you sign up for those and they give you those free things because if I give you free content or free training, guess what it does to you? It makes you more likely to buy from me. At a dealership, do we have free content and training we can provide customers? Hell yeah. Think about it. We used to do it physically. Who has ever done like a new owner clinic in your service department? You bring all the new owners in that bought, you introduce them to service, you teach them about everything that's on the cars, you show them all that. You can deliver that same thing digitally, and by doing so, you can increase the probability that your digital customers engage with you and buy something. Scarcity. You guys don't need training on scarcity right now because your biggest problem is scarcity. It's why customers are paying all the money for cars, but websites out there are using scarcity against you all the time. Anybody ever been to like StubHub? You're checking out and you're terrified that those tickets are gonna get away from you. You're like feverishly typing with your thumbs as fast as you can because I want those tickets, right? That countdown clock is literally just triggering your scarcity response in the same way that me telling a customer on the phone that, hey, we are pre-selling our inventory as fast as we get it. Let's make sure that if this is the car that you want, that we get it for you. That's triggering that same level, and you can do it through your websites by actually telling customers the speed at which your vehicles are moving. How about this? It's one of my favorites. This is from a website to book stuff. It's literally saying, we have 5 rooms left. We have 3 rooms left at this price. They're literally telling you what their inventory is and how when that inventory goes away, it's moving at such a rate that if you don't make the decision now, you're probably going to miss out and lose from it. How about authority? Are you an authority at your dealership on the vehicles that you sell? Heck yes, you are. You should be leveraging that. There's great companies that are doing that. Here's one on Shopify that says, hey, you've come to the right place. Let's pair you up with a Shopify expert to make sure that we can start getting you set up to be as successful as possible with what you're doing. Right, here's another great one. Anybody ever been to a Genius Bar? I mean, think about that. They describe on their website the value of a Genius Bar to incentivize you to want to do business with a Genius Bar, because if the Genius tells you something, you take it as the truth. How about consistency? How does a website use consistency to increase the probability that you buy? I'm going to show you my Amazon. This is actually mine. I took a screenshot of it last night. You can see my little Google logo right there. If Lizette Gold's here from Google, don't stalk me. Right, here's my little thing. Here's what's also sad. I have a save for later pile. Who's ever saved stuff for later? You know what that means? That means that I'm buying it slowly so that my wife doesn't get mad at me. That's literally what my save for later is. And I've already committed to buy these things. Now, I also am kind of calling myself out here because what I'm buying is a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons stuff because I'm running a campaign with my kiddos. Thank you, right? Like, it's all Warlock tiles because I'm running Dragons of Icespire Peak with a bunch of 6-year-olds, and it's super fun. But me saving that item for later is me doing what? Making a commitment to that item. Is your dealership website giving you the capacity to get that customer to commit? How do you get a customer to like you digitally? It's a problem we have, right? How do you get a customer to like you digitally? Well, I found some really great examples. I love the content put out by companies like Dollar Shave Club that literally are engaging interesting topics that are all dealing with some level of their space. This one's about what happens if you just stop trimming your fingernails and toenails. And as I was like literally putting this presentation together, I was reading that article and I was like, well, I really like Dollar Shave Club. I like it because it's funny and there's pictures in there that grossed me out. But the reality is that they're all about shaving and hygiene, so they're releasing content that engages you in their shaving and hygiene, which then makes you sign up for their services, and they're a multi-billion-dollar company. How do you build social proof or consistent consensus inside your website? The one everybody knows is reviews, right? We talk about reviews all the time. I think the more powerful one is one that, this is actually from me. If any of you want a Whoop, by the way, please use that link. Right? Because I've referred 6 people to Whoop, they've all bought it, and I've had 6 months of free Whoop, and I got my Whoop band up here, and it thinks I'm on activity because I'm on stage jumping around like an idiot. Now, referrals. You do referrals from one salesperson to a customer all the time. Is your website asking your customers that love you to refer you to other people, and is there a benefit for them for getting that? And if not, that's another way that we can make money. Then what do? We all know this social proof, which is literally customer reviews. Who here uses customer reviews to decide what you're gonna buy? Show of hands. Bro, I'm doing dinner every night in Vegas. They're really fun, fancy restaurants of people I love to hang out with. Guess how I picked what restaurants? It was literally looking at photos and reading reviews and being like, yeah, I'm not going there anymore. I'm gonna go to this one instead. That's literally how we make buying decisions. And so here's my final big question for you. Today, are we more digital or less digital in auto? More digital or less digital? Who's more digital? Show of hands. All right, yeah, it's all of you. It should be all of you. Who's less digital? If anybody raise their hand, I was gonna make fun of them, so thank you. More digital, because we are absolutely more digital today. Everything we're doing is driven digitally. And so my question is, if we're more digital, what's the outcome of that? And by the way, you know that there's data that supports we're more digital. NADA did a study where they looked at dealership websites and found that in 2018, less than 5% of dealers had a payment calculator on a website. Think about a payment calculator on your website. That's Reciprocity. Think about your customers that call you asking for a payment on a specific unit of inventory, and when I went through training, was taught to tell them, you get the best deal when you come to the dealership. Right? Think of what does that customer want? They want information. And when we provide that customer information, we are actually triggering reciprocity in a way that influences the likelihood of them to buy from us. What NADA found is that in 18, less than 5% of dealers had a payment on their website. In 21, more than 90% do. And I know what it was like back in 2018, because in 2017 at NADA, I was one of 4 companies trying to sell a payment on a dealership website. And I remember the responses that I got from all my buddies that were dealers I remember one like really specific instance. A buddy of mine's a dealer from Little Rock, Arkansas. Sits down, I'm showing him like our whole pitch on like why you need digital retail before it was called digital retail. It's like, oh, check it out, I got this handy dandy payment calculator on your website. It's gonna calculate all the payments and do lending. And he stops me with, hey man, by the way, that sounds just like him. Hey man, you telling me you want me to put a payment calculator, you want me to put a payment on my website? And I was like, yeah man, that's what I'm telling you. Never gonna happen. No way, man. Like I remember distinctly that interaction. And I think back, like, why did he not want to put a payment on his website? Yeah, he wanted to come to them because he didn't want that transparency to create that like crushing of F&I income. Because back then, guess what? We'd already lost all the revenue selling used cars. Thanks, Velocity. I mean, I read the book and did it. It was awesome for 2 years, and then I fell apart. Right? We didn't want to like lose the front end gross because we were like literally our methodology was like, all right, how much we got to lose to like move this pig? I'm like 2 units away from hitting that OEM money that I got to get. So we didn't have any revenue on the front end of our like gross and selling new cars. So where were we living off from a gross perspective? F&I. And we're like, oh, we're going to put that online? Awesome. This is going to be real fun. But now you've got 90% of dealers have some level of F&I engagement tool on their website. And the question is, why? Like, how did that happen? Like, why do we all have payment calculators now? Yeah, like some people are like, oh, because the customers wanted it. No, right? Like, we weren't like, oh, let's do it because of the customers. There's a very specific reason, and you saw this massive ramp up at that time. Yeah, they can, exactly. And so what we did was when COVID hit and all of a sudden stores in places like New Jersey and Michigan, you couldn't sell a car because you were a non-essential business. Dealers are scrappy as hell, and we got really creative and we figured out a way, and we reached out to digital retailing companies and said, hey, I need one of those things on my website because I got to move metal and I can't let people into my showroom. And you had this massive, I literally think the 0 hour for digital retailing was May of 2020 because you had this massive spike of dealers that were adopting it. And when I think back to the hypothesis of my buddy from Arkansas telling me never gonna have a payment calculator on his website, being that I'm gonna not make enough gross, the outcome of that hypothesis, if we're all doing that online, we should all be making less gross. Now, I work for an organization called Stone Eagle that does a ton of data and analytics. We got 6,500 dealers, literally analyzed 26 million car deals from January of 19 to December of 21. And if you take that May of 2020 date and you draw a red line in the middle of it, here's what gross has done since January of 19. Literally front and back gross has gone up insanely big after we all went digital. And if you zoom in on front gross, bro, check this out. Front gross is up literally 7x. Our front grosses are the highest they've ever been, and our F&I PVR has gone up 57% or $800 a copy. Bro, we're running $1,900 a copy in PVR in this industry right now. I like sadomasochistically looked up the numbers from when I was an F&I director inside of Stone. I was like, oh, I'll go check out what my numbers. I thought I was the greatest director of all times. Most of you would fire me, right? Like I was absolutely pathetic based on these numbers. And I think about it, we're running $1,900 a copy. And so the answer is that if we leverage digital correctly, and we actually think about digital not as an internet department thing, but as a selling cars and making money thing, what can we do to transform our businesses? I got 1 minute for questions. I'll do it Reddit style, ask me anything. I will answer them, so be careful what you wish for. Any questions out there? All right, it's been real, it's been fun. Thank you all so much for sharing your time with me. I'll see y'all around. Thank you, ma'am.
Great job, Joe. Always a pleasure. Great job. Thank you.